This episode is proudly supported by Pepe Sayer Australian Cultured Butter.
It's a one-stop shop for all your butter needs at Pepe Sayer. So if you're a restaurant or an airline or a function centre or a cafe, you can give us a call or jump online with us, and we have everything you need for your butter needs. We cover all of it. The biggest one for me is the little logs that we make that you can cut down and put a little Pepe Sayer tab on it. Also the 15-gram portions, but we also do blocks. And in the blocks, so we do 25 kilo or 20 kilo, but we also do a 2 kilo. So you can buy a block of butter 2 kilo, and the prices are really competitive with the rest of the markets on those products.
For more information, go to pepesayer.com.au.
School became something that I just wanted to sort of get through so I could focus on my business. But it was definitely hard, coming home some nights, and sometimes your business needs you, and obviously you've got homework and stuff at school. But I found myself having to try and use my time efficiently. I'd work through my recess and lunch breaks at school, try and do my homework so I could come home and just focus on the business.
We love celebrating young talent on Dirty Linen. It is so important to keep an eye and celebrate the young people coming up through the industry. Our guest today is Morgan Hipworth, who came to industry attention as a young teenager. He's been at it for a while, so he's sort of a veteran, even though he is still very young. A lot of people in Melbourne will know Bistro Morgan for its incredible donuts. They've recently opened a second location, building on the Windsor location and adding a new shop in Fitzroy. Morgan, it is awesome to have you on Dirty Linen. A big, warm, sugary, donut-loving welcome.
Hey, Dani, thanks for having me.
It's really good to have you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, about the way you got started, and perhaps we can frame it by telling us how old you were when you got started and how old you are now as an industry veteran.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess I'm 22 now. Backtracks, we can go back to when I first started cooking. I was about 7. I literally started by watching MasterChef on TV. I remember when it first came on air, I was sitting with mum and dad on the couch as a young kid, and I was thinking, what a silly show. Who would want to watch somebody cook on TV? And we needed something to watch as a family, and all of a sudden we found ourselves watching it each night, and I found myself really, really enjoying it. And each weekend I would sort of print out the recipe of, the pressure test or whatever gone in the weeks gone by, and I'll try and recreate it at home. And, as my skills got better and better, I used to set up our formal dining room at home as a restaurant, and I used to call it Bistro Morgan because I loved French food. And I'd print out menu cards, and I would score cards, and I'd make my parents wait at the door, and I'd seat them like a waiter, and then I'd go down and finish up cooking what I had been making all afternoon, and then serve it to them, and then make them score it all out of 10. And that sort of went on for maybe 2 or 3 years until I was about 10 or 11. And then I sort of started getting little cake orders for family and friends' birthdays. It started with, people like my auntie being like, oh, here's $50. And, you can make your cousin's birthday cake. And then that sort of really turned into a business when I was 13. I went down to a local cafe just in Ripponlea, and we were having some lunch with my grandma and mum, and we were paying the bill, and I was actually wanting to get some coffee beans for my coffee machine at home. And the lady who was serving us asked me if I wanted them ground or whole bean. And I said, oh no, I've got a grinder at home, so I can do that. And obviously there's not many 13-year-olds who even know what type of coffee they want, or let alone have a grinder. So she was like, why do you know so much about this? And one thing led to another. And I said, look, I do a bit of cooking and baking at home, and it's sort of what I love to do. And then she very kindly said, look, we're looking for a new cake supplier. Maybe you could bring some samples in, and you could maybe sell your stuff here. And I didn't really think too much of it. About 2 or 3 weeks later, I remember going into mum and dad's room, and I was like, oh, do you reckon they were serious? And mum was like, well, send them an email. The worst they can do is not reply. So I sent them an email, and a couple of days later, the manager came back saying, yeah, that was actually the owner, Amanda, you're speaking to, and she's overseas at the moment, but she's asked me if you can bring some samples in. A week later, I took down samples of everything I knew how to bake. It was, literally everything from pavlova to vanilla slice to Portuguese custard tarts to anything I could do. I just tried to make it to see what they would like. And all of a sudden, I found myself with them placing their first order that afternoon. I was 13 in year 9, and I found myself supplying this cafe with all their cakes. And so I did their full range of stuff. And at this stage, I'd still never really made donuts before in my life. And then when I was for coming up for Valentine's Day that year, so it would have been 2014, they asked me to make something a bit special for Valentine's Day. And we came up with the idea of doing love heart shaped donuts. And so that was the first time I'd ever really made a donut before. I just used a basic recipe I found online and a bit of practice during that week. And I whipped them up on that Sunday morning, I think it was, of Valentine's Day. We delivered them down and they were super, super popular. They flew out the door. And then so they asked for just normal donuts every weekend onwards as a weekend special. And then all of a sudden, I got a bit of media attention. I had an article in the Herald Sun, and that really just focused on donuts. And all of a sudden, I was sort of known as that donut kid. I found myself supplying about 10, 15 cafes around Melbourne. I was making about 800 donuts every weekend from home while still being in high school. And that sort of went on for 2 or 3 years. Then I found myself really wanting a shop, and still being in high school, mum and dad were very much like, oh, maybe you should just finish school and then do whatever you want kind of thing. But me being me, I didn't take no for an answer. So we came up with the compromise of having a pop-up store. And so I had a pop-up store in the September of 2016 down in High Street, Windsor. And I ended up selling 10,000 donuts in 8 days, which was just absolutely manic. And then the same store came up for permanent lease about 2 months later, and somehow I convinced mum and dad to let me open it. And so I used all the money that I made from the pop-up store to fit out that store, and then Bistro Morgan down in Windsor was officially opened in December of 2016.
Oh my goodness, what a tale, Morgan. So did you finish school while you'd opened this shop?
Yeah, I did, yeah. So I graduated high school in 2018. So I opened in 2016 going into year 11. So yeah, I did year 11 and year 12 with the store open.
And what was that like, balancing these two very different things?
Yeah, it was a constant juggling act. I wouldn't say it was easy, but for me, school became something that I just wanted to sort of get through so I could focus on my business. And it was almost became like one of those things that I just wanted to get through it and have it as that backup option and have that education there. So I was pretty determined to finish school whilst doing it. But it was definitely hard, coming home some nights, and sometimes your business needs you, and obviously you've got homework and stuff at school, but I found myself having to try and use my time efficiently. I'd work through my recess and lunch breaks at school, trying to do my homework so I could come home and just focus on the business.
That is amazing. So, I mean, there's, I suppose, two main strands. One is the food side of it and one is the business side of it. I mean, is there something in your background or, the way that you were as a kid that just made you have this incredible focus and ambition?
Yeah, it's really hard, and often, especially it comes down, it's funny. So many people tell my parents, and I wish my kids were like you and you've done such a good job. And mum and dad always say, we don't know what we did. Like, we don't know if we did anything differently or anything. And I think when I look back, I've got absolutely amazing parents who are super, super supportive and really do, support anything I want to do, and they'll help me every step of the way. And growing up as an only child, I think I'm a lot closer to parents and grew up in a lot more mature household than most other kids, especially with siblings. Mum has her own business in fashion, so growing up talking about things like GST and tax returns and stuff over the dinner table was kind of common. So I sort of grew up, I guess, with a bit of an understanding. And then my dad is just very cluey about anything. He's one of those people that just knows everything about anything. So if I ever have a question, especially growing up about that whole business tax side, it was always going to dad and asking what the best course of action was. So I think the hard work and that side of things definitely came from my parents and their work ethic. Mum and dad both don't stop and just work, crazy hours. And I think that's where I sort of got that determination from.
What about being a leader and an employer at such a young age?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I still, even to this day, there's still sometimes pinch me moments where you're working with some absolutely amazing people, and it's really funny to think that, like, you're the leader and you're in charge, as you say. It's, especially at a young age, it was challenging, and I think it sort of forced me to grow up a little bit faster than a lot of my peers of a similar age, because we're trying to deal with people who are, sometimes 20, 30 years older than you, and trying to gain the respect of someone like that is sometimes challenging, and you're trying to run a business and do things the way you want to do them, and it's a constant seesaw between the ethics and the respect. So it's hard, and I think it taught me a lot about managing people, and I think it's something I'm still getting better at every single day, and it's something I've definitely gotten a lot better at than when I first started.
What are some of the insights you've gained about managing people?
I think I think when I first started, I didn't really take into account how important people were. As weird as that sounds, like in a business point of view, I think a lot of the times I forgot that staff members, need to be happy in their jobs, and staff members need to love the environment and create a good culture. I think I was very early ages, I was very focused on the customer experience, and sometimes didn't necessarily think about what that meant for staff. And so that's something that I've found myself in the last probably 4 or 5 years really trying to focus on and bring back, because at the end of the day, a good customer experience comes from the owners and the staff.
Interesting. And let's talk about the creative process and, the actual output of Bistro Morgan. Tell us how your donuts have changed over the years.
Yeah, 100. I think, it's quite funny. Obviously, Bistro Morgan is, sort of the brainchild of 13-year-old me who started off with all these crazy, out there flavors of donuts. And, I've done about 3,000, 4,000 flavors in my life. Back when I was supplying cafes, we would do 12 new flavors every Saturday, 12 new flavors every Sunday. I was just coming up with as many as I could, and I was trying to push as many newbies out as I could. So I think I used to get inspiration from anywhere and everywhere. I would go to the supermarket aisles, walk down the shelves and see what products were there, what flavors I could draw on, what chocolate bar I could use next, and what I could recreate. I think that's when I was younger where I got a lot of my inspiration. But I guess as I've grown up and as I've done more formal training and as I've gotten better in the industry as well, a lot of my techniques and styles come from some classic dishes and desserts and flavor pairings that I can sort of reinvent and put a spin on in my own way.
Yeah, so tell us about some flavors you're loving at the moment.
Yeah, one of our most popular, and it's been one of our most popular for a long time, is our creme brulee. It's got a beautiful vanilla bean custard on the inside, and then we put a really nice layer of crunchy toffee on top. I think it's all about, for me, a creme brulee is all about that harmony between the texture of the crunch and the creaminess of the custard. And I think it's something that we really do beautifully in a donut. That's something that's not often seen, is a lot of texture in a donut. So I think that's one of my absolute favourites. The good cinnamon scroll is one of my favourites. We've just launched a Biscoff cinnamon scroll. That's being really, really popular. It's got a beautiful Biscoff lotus frosting on top and then a fluffy cinnamon scroll underneath. And that's definitely one of my favourites at the moment.
Oh, wow. They both sound so nice, but also they're quite classic, because I remember when you started it was pretty outlandish, like those syringes and different flavors. And
yeah, we definitely, I think, and that's where it's quite interesting. As you said, we started with the syringes. We phased those out probably about 6 years ago now, and that was a choice I made, just more of an environmentally factor, just to try and reduce the single-use plastic more than anything. But I think I started as a 13-year-old, and now being 22, I've matured as well, and the business is sort of aging with me and maturing with me, and that's why our flavors are changing and what we offer is changing. We started just doing donuts. Now we have a beautiful range of toasties and scrolls and cookies, and obviously with a new restaurant opening on the way as well, it's going to be a completely different offering there too.
Oh, tell me about that.
Yeah, so I'm opening a new restaurant cafe called Maven, which is down in Fitzroy next to our new Fitzroy store. And so that's coming later in the year. We're still in construction at the moment, aiming for about mid-November at the moment. But that's going to be beautiful. Do breakfast, lunch every day of the week, and then dinner 3 nights a week.
Oh, Morgan, that's so exciting.
Yeah, so it should be good.
It's a departure from what you're known for, but I suppose thinking back to that 7-year-old on the couch watching MasterChef, it probably feels like quite a natural step for you.
Yeah, for me, it was always the dream was a cafe restaurant. As I said, I think Bistro Morgan was the brainchild of 13-year-old Morgan, and Maven's now the brainchild of 22-year-old Morgan, which is a completely different person in terms of thoughts, ideas, and culinary experience. I've gone on to get some amazing pastry training in Paris and some great experience across the industry. So I think it's using those experiences to then create a beautiful dining experience, which is what I was searching for next in my career. I think bakery is amazing and I love Bistro Morgan, and I'm always planning on keeping it around to have that sort of offering. But I think to have a place where people can come and experience it like they're coming to my house to dine is what I was really yearning for next.
So tell me about the offering, because I'm very obsessed right now, well, probably always, but particularly now because I've just been writing a cafe guide, very obsessed with your brunch and that daytime offering. Tell me, where do you think things are at for cafes in Australia at the moment, and what are you going to bring to that world?
Yeah, from my point of view, we're going in with the approach of modern Australian, which is trying to, use our ingredients that we have and use them best with some fusions from areas around the globe, which our chefs have some good experience from. So we're in early stages, given we're still about 2 or 3 months away from opening, but I'm trying to offer an experience that will sort of go across breakfast, lunch and dinner. So I want people to be able to come here for daytime cocktails as well as come here for 11 a.m. for some chili scramble. I think it's one of those experiences that you need to be able to come, feel casual enough, but still feel like it's special that you're being treated to something that's not just brekkie at your house. So there'll be some beautiful dishes like, chili scramble for, brekkie. Heading on to, dinner time, you've got like slow roasted lamb shoulder, duck fat, black garlic potatoes and things like that.
Oh, you've got me there. I think one of the trends that I've picked up on in my guide is that, a lot of people are watching what they spend, and breakfast is a meal that they often think, well, I can do that myself at home. And I think cafes have to create something that's a little bit special, a bit of a draw card. But at the same time, I do think people can be quite conservative with their brunches. They sort of want what they want. I mean, do you think that's going to be a tricky thing to balance?
Yeah, I think it's always a balancing act, especially as you say with cafes, and it's that draw card of, well, what else can you bring that makes people come to your venue? And for us, we're going to have for breakfast, lunch, we're going to have a beautiful pastry offering as well. Given the venue at Fitzroy, out the back, we have our full bakery kitchen, which is where we make all of our products for Bistro Morgan. So we're going to make fresh-made croissants. We'll have some beautiful tarts. Our head pastry chef's from France, so he's going to do some beautiful entremets and just a beautiful range of pastries that is not something you can get at home. So I think having all those little additions to the offering is what really can set you apart from just like an everyday run-of-the-mill cafe where people could make a similar style breakfast at home.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And it just makes me think of reading the Loon cookbook recently, which is absolutely beautiful. But one of the methods, it's got this bit in it where it's like, set your alarm for 2 a.m. Get up and boil the kettle. It's like, yeah, okay, I am really not going to do this at home. Like, full power to the croissant geeks who will, and may their croissants be buttery and their days be beautiful. But I will go out for my pastry.
It's a labour of love, and that's why I always say to people, you got to be in hospitality for the love of it. And I always say, if you find a job you love, you'll never have to work a day in your life. And I think that's the motto you really need to take to these venues, because people can tell when you love what you do. So I want people to come here and be filled with the same sense of joy that we get when we're serving them.
I mean, Morgan, it sounds, kind of like a dream journey, but I bet it hasn't all been roses. Have there been any times that you've, really questioned what you're doing, or you've had real roadblocks on your path?
Yeah, look, I think you always get those times, and there's so many different challenges you get with business. We've had some venues that didn't work out. We had a pop-up a couple of years ago that, wasn't as good as we expected. And that definitely, popped us back a few months to years in the pipeline, had staffing issues. I think you can speak to any hospitality owner in Melbourne, and they'll almost always have nightmare stories about staff. And I think all these things definitely make it challenging. And I think the one that's the most common is just the genuine amount of hours that you have to pour into your business, and especially in hospitality. Like, there's not many weeks that I'll get away without working 80 to 100 hours a week on the business. Like any night I'm home, I'm on the couch at 10:30 p.m. with my laptop, working, doing emails, trying to get on top of stuff. I think the sheer volume of workload is super understated from the outside, and so much goes into running a business that most people don't even see. And then, of course, growing up, I think, when I was younger, I used to especially get a lot of that whole age criticism, which I think in Australia is kind of a shame. We kind of had generally speaking, there's a bit of a culture of tall poppy syndrome. A lot of people love to find a reason to tear somebody down rather than build them up. So I think when I was younger, that was definitely quite a challenge. But I think as I've gotten older and been around the industry more, I'm sort of starting to break out from that, which is nice.
Wow, that's interesting and quite sad to hear. I think, there's obviously this curiosity factor, this kid running this business, but but it's a shame to hear that, people were a bit suspicious of what you were up to as well.
Yeah, we had people, so many, like when I first started, I remember there was a few people, they were even in the hospital industry, and they were like, oh, his mum and dad is just like exploiting him, and like it's their business, and I bet you they run a bakery, and it's quite funny. And you go, maybe come and understand and ask some questions. Mum and dad both have no food experience. I saved up the money from doing cafes, supplying them for 2.5 years, working from home to open the store. So it's funny just what the assumptions I think people make rather than actually learning the story and understanding what went on. Yeah,
wow, you've certainly picked up a lot of life lessons along the way, Morgan.
Yeah, I think it forces you to.
Well, I mean, congratulations on everything you've done so far, and I'm so excited about Maven. That's just, really so cool. You've also got, you're doing some TV projects, aren't you? Something vaguely crossed my radar. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I've got Dessert Masters coming out later this year. I think that goes to air sometime in October on Network 10. So that's a cool new spin-off of MasterChef where being titled as Australia's top 10 pastry chefs, which is a pretty cool title to get. I was definitely the youngest on there, but got some amazing people alongside me like Adriano Zumbo, Kirsten Tibbles, Anna Poviviu. So some really, really good names to be alongside and competing against. So we all are contestants, and it's being hosted by Amri Gouchon, who's a beautiful French pastry chef who does some amazing chocolate sculptures and pastry work at his school. So that's definitely coming up later this year. And then just some social media. I share all my recipes, make short form videos across Instagram and TikTok, and that's sort of my other passion. And at the moment, that's how I share more of my love for broader food rather than just the bakery side.
That's how cool, though. Like, you started watching MasterChef and now you're on this MasterChef spin-off with probably some of the heroes that you were watching back in the day.
Yeah, I was, as I said, competing against like Zumbo, right? And I literally, when the first week we were filming, I pulled him aside and I said, oh, mate, have a look at this photo. And I put up a photo of him and I when I was 13 at one of his courses. And I looked very young, and it was quite funny to say, I was in a course with you back when I was 13, and here we are, fast track, almost 10 years, and pretty honoured to be standing next to, people of that calibre competing alongside them.
Bloody love that. So a lot of young chefs or aspiring hospitality professionals listen to this show. What advice could you give people who are coming up in the industry? How could they, pursue their dreams, maintain a bit of a balanced life, although maybe you're not the best advisor on that. But yeah, what sort of words of wisdom do you have, Morgan?
Yeah, look, for me, I think the best thing is to just follow your gut. If something feels right, then it's probably right. If something feels wrong, then it's probably wrong. So if you're loving what you're doing, yes, it might be hard work and maybe you don't feel like you're getting the reward or the required outcome that you want now, but keep putting in the work, and it's bound to come and it's bound to happen. I think, don't be scared of hard work. I think that's the key thing I see with some of my staff as well, and have seen over the years. A lot of the younger people, it's very hard to find young people who are willing to work and put in the hard work, which is scary for hospitality because, as we all know, in hospo, it's not easy work. So I think if you are wanting to make it, the best thing to come to work or to your business with is a great work ethic and just a really good attitude.
Love it. So good to catch up. It definitely makes me feel like some donuts, but also some chili scrambled eggs. Thanks for making the time for a chat, Morgan. It's been really great to chat to you.
Of course, it's been a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtyLinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This